So welcome to meditation and music. And if you've been following along, we've been working with addiction. And today is part 3. So if you want to go back to the previous 2 meditations, the first meditation was talking about how our deepest addiction is to our story, to a limiting belief that we are not enough, that we are somehow separate and apart from our innocence, from our wholeness, from our worthiness, and how we have been conditioned to avoid the feelings that come up around that. And so, with this time of COVID and self sheltering and quarantine, and we're all having more time and more space to be, we're in our own homes. And so, this addictive emotions and addictive thought patterns are easily aroused, easily triggered. And what we're finding is, to the degree that we've been conditioned not to be able to sit with that which is uncomfortable and painful, that is to the degree that we're going to reach for something outside of ourselves to fill that, to quench that, to suppress that. So we then moved into how pain is a part of life. And we've been only conditioned to think that we shouldn't feel uncomfortable. Even with our children, sometimes we unintentionally and unconsciously rush in to fix whatever uncomfortable feelings they might have, or uncomfortable emotions, their own storms, their storms that they're moving through. When really, if you think of a young child, they are very comfortable expressing the turmoil of their own storms, of their own hurricanes, so to speak. They'll get it out and they'll move on. Sometimes the getting out takes 3 minutes. They have like a 3-minute temper tantrum. Sometimes they have a 30-minute temper tantrum. Sometimes they're having a 30-day temper tantrum. That's when it gets really challenging for us to hold the high watch. But it's a metaphor, and the same for ourselves. Sometimes those emotions and that emotional turmoil is coming up and it feels so uncomfortable that it's very challenging to stick with it and calm our own emotional storms, be present with all the turmoil that's coming up. And so we worked with that last time, and now this time today, we're moving to the deepest part of addiction. Right? The deepest part of addiction is a mistaken thought, an emotion, an intensity that bubbles up to the surface of our awareness that says that who you are isn't okay. Who you are in some way, shape, or form isn't okay. And it could be the smallest little moment. You're cooking breakfast and it comes out not the way you wanted it to, and you slightly, subtly berate yourself, judge yourself. It's a way of saying to yourself, just over, doing a stir fry, that something's wrong with you. And then you may reach for something outside of yourself to suppress that feeling. Or it could be something huge. You're nervous during this time around your livelihood, your employment, your finances. It could be evoking intense emotions around being in close quarters with those around you. So it doesn't matter how slight, it doesn't matter how huge. What you want to begin to notice are the ways that you sever yourself from your own innocence, from your own wholeness, and then you go to reach for something outside of yourself to suppress that. So far, just give me a yes or a no if that's making sense to you, because the intervention, we talked about this last time, the intervention inside of yourself, the coming home to yourself, is the willingness to feel what you're feeling and the willingness to come home to yourself to say, I'm not my story. I'm not that habitual thought pattern. I'm not the way I've been conditioned. I'm willing to know that I am whole, that I am deserving, that I am worthy, that I am one with this universal presence. I am one with this universal benevolence. And so as we're moving into the time of silence, I want to offer a tangible, practical tool that you can take with you. And it's around a practice of harmlessness. So if you think about it, to the degree that you have been conditioned to think that something's wrong with you is to the degree that you're going to reach to something outside of yourself, look to something outside of yourself. It could be outer validation. There's a lot of talk also now, so much going on in social media, how many likes you have, how many comments, all these ways that we look to the outside to try to validate ourselves. Today, and when you think of harmlessness and innocence, those are the words I want you to meditate with us: harmlessness, innocence. To the degree that you have been conditioned and remind yourself over and over around, you are innocent. You're innocent. This is why there's such a deep conversation, because we've all been conditioned from culture, original sin. Something's wrong with us culturally. Jen and I were talking about, or we were texting about how mothers have been conditioned to think that we are less than, we aren't as valuable as. The work that we do as mothers is invisible, it isn't valued. That's a cultural conditioning that something's wrong with us, something's less good about us, something's less valuable about us, something's less worthy about us as a whole entire culture, a planet of a culture. And so to that degree, then we don't see our own innocence. We don't see our own worthiness. We don't see our own wholeness and worthiness. Now, the reason I speak of this word harmlessness is because I want you to take with you today, and in this time of silence, begin to watch and observe the ways in your own consciousness you do not practice harmlessness to yourself. You practice harm to yourself. How do you practice harm to yourself? Self-abuse, self-judgment, self-sabotage, self-shaming, self-criticism. That is inflicting and inducing harm to yourself. So just be with that. We're going to be with that in the silence in a moment. But the harm, notice, observe, witness the harm that you inflict onto yourself every time you perpetuate harm that had been done to you. Now you're a grown-up, now you're an adult, now you're inflicting, you are perpetuating harm through self-judgment, self-criticism, self-sabotage, self-sacrifice, any ways that you are now perpetuating that onto yourself. It's as simple as you're doing a stir fry, doesn't come out the way you want, and you go, you see, I am Make sense?
Oh, it makes,
I feel
it makes
you
sense.
want to, I feel you.
Really?
Yeah, I want
Well,
you.
it's, whether it's self-judgment, whether it's taking a drink, whether it's smoking weed, whether it's acting out sexually, it's like, especially, in the context of addictions that are out, that a lot of people have judgments about: the drinking, the drugging, the sex, the gambling, whatever it is. For me, I know that it felt like I was soothing myself. And I realized that I'm kind of re-abusing myself.
Yeah, and I think the soothing is the word, right? That's the optimum word. That's what we're all trying to do. Whether it's as simple as you judge yourself about a stir fry you're making, or you actually are having a moment where you think you're worthless. Both places, you're going to reach for something to soothe, and you're going to reach to the outside.
Yeah.
And this whole practice, and why we come together to meditate, is to remind ourselves that the ultimate and the only soothing is inner soothing. That's why I always work with pictures with my clients, and I always work with pictures if you've taken any of my classes, because the ultimate and the only soothing is inner soothing, and we are not taught how to do that.
And we're not just the inner soothing, but we're not taught how to just be with what's coming
Exactly.
up. We're not taught. It's, it reminds me of when my father died as opposed to when my brother died. When my father passed in 93, I had no idea how to be with the grief, because grief is not just the sadness, it's everything that you've experienced with another human being that's coming forward. And at 33 years of age, I never developed a language or or action steps to be with that. And I was in a men's group at the time, and they were kind of like letting me have it, but then at a certain point, it's like, okay, get on with it. Kind of, that's the cultural belief. When my brother passed, and perhaps I took it to the other extreme, that I sat with it so long and grieved so heavy and kind of went into a dark place. But I definitely feel like it's finding the balance to sit with my discomfort, to sit with my anger, to sit with my sadness, to be with my joy. Because a lot of times when I would get in joy, I'm like, okay, when's the other? For a long time, especially in my 30s, it's like, okay, I can't get too happy because the other shoe's going to drop. And
the unconscious thing was, and I don't have the tools to sit with something if the other, because life is going to present us.
Right.
So yeah, exactly.
Right.
So is this resonant with you all? We're going to move into the silence now, and I'll take us through a guided process, and Jamie will, of course, soothe us. But the outer soothing, and I think this bears to be said as we're moving into the silence, outer soothing through music, through guided meditations, those are training wheels, those are bridges that don't have an ultimate negative effect like eating or berating yourself. They're a bridge to your own innocence, back to your own wholeness, back. So today is about coming home to your own wholeness, your own worthiness, your own self. So let's just gently close our eyes. Just take a nice deep breath in together. And exhale. Deep breath in again. And exhale. Just becoming aware of your breath, opening your heart.
I'm not my story. I'm not my song. Been seeking glory my whole life long. Been on my own since I was born. A badge of less than I have worn. I've fallen down, I've bled my knees. Stumbled on life's mediocrities, wordless without a prayer, or so I thought. The battles that I won, I never fought. I'm not my story, I'm not my song. Been seeking glory my whole life long. Been on my own since I was born. A badge of less than I have worn. Been judging you as much as me. Seeking surrender, haven't found the key. Beaten, battered, broken, living blue. Can I forgive myself to see the truth? I'm not my story, I'm not my song. Been seeking glory my whole life long. been on my own since I was born. A badge of less than I have worn. Bless this evolution, conscious contribution. Only one solution is love. It's love. It's love. It's love. Bless this evolution, conscious contribution. Only one solution is love. Is love. It's love. It's love. I'm not my story. This is my song. Been bound for glory my whole life long. I've been lifted up since I was born. The Holy Spirit has taken form. Oh, bless this evolution, conscious contribution. Only one solution is love. It's love. It's love. It's love. Bless this evolution, conscious contribution. Only one solution is love. It's love. It's love. It's love. This is my story. This is my song. I've been bound for glory my whole life long. I've been lifted up since I was born. The Holy Spirit is taken form. The Holy Spirit is taken form. The Holy Spirit is taken form.
We just move deeper into the silence of our own heart. You just begin to ask yourself, if you're not your story, who are you? Beneath any story that you have allowed, beneath that story, who are you? Who are you before your conditioning? Who are you before you were born to your parents, to your family? Who are you? Who are you as a spirit? What is your infinite potential? Who are you as potentiality, as pure potential, as pure energy, as pure love? Who am I? How does the harm I inflict upon myself through judgment, criticism, how does it keep me in my story? How does it keep me severed from my highest self? How does my own self-induced harm, self-judgment, self-criticism, self-shaming, self-sabotaging keep me from my truest self, my innocent self, my whole self, my worthy self, my high vibration, my pure light, my pristine being, my infinite potential, my infinite possibilities? How does it keep me small? If this universe is truly benevolent and it only loves you, and that is its consistent energy, and if the universe is harmless, who would you be if you practiced harmlessness to yourself? Begin to become aware of the individual you would connect with inside of yourself when you practice seeing your own innocence, treating yourself with harmlessness, seeing your own worthiness, your own deserving, your own wholeness, your own abundance, seeing yourself as part of the divine flow, as one with the divine flow, as unified with the divine flow. Who are you? In this moment, see yourself as light. You are not your story. You are not your conditioning. You are not your past. You're not any of the things you tell yourself you are. You are none of it. You are light. You are not your addictions. You are not the anxiety that reaches to fill. You are not the emptiness. You are not the worthlessness. You are not your gender. You are not your bank account. You are not your zip code. You are not your degrees or lack thereof. You are not your body size. You are not your body weight. You are not your gender. See? You are not your bank.
Sorry.
You are light. You are wholeness. You are a spiritual being. You are a spiritual being moving through, visiting, sharing your contributions, your gifts on earth. You're a spiritual being looking for a spiritual experience while you're on earth. You're a spiritual being wanting to move through earth, knowing and connected to your worthiness, your wholeness, your light, your vibration. You're a vibrational being, a high, pristine, pure energy of unconditional love, of infinite potentiality, infinite possibilities. Who are you when you know yourself as the light that you are? You're not denying your humanness. You're greater than your humanness. You embrace your humanness from your spiritual container.
Bless this evolution. Conscious contribution. There's only one solution. It's love. It's love. It's love. It's love. It's love. Oh, 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 oh. Bless this evolution that we'll all make it now. It's a conscious contribution. It's a conscious contribution. Yeah. Only one solution. There's only one solution. That's love. It's love. It's love. I'm not. This is my story. This is my song. Been bound for glory my whole life long. I've been lifted up since I was born. The Holy Spirit has taken form. Oh, this is my story. This is my song. I've been bound for glory my whole life long. I've been lifted up since I was born. The Holy Spirit is taking form. The Holy Spirit is taking form. The Holy Spirit.
So we just each set our own individual intention of how it is that you are willing to connect with yourself as your own wholeness, coming home to your own innocence, practicing harmlessness, unifying with your wholeness, your worthiness, that you are more than enough, that your being is connected to the flow. And then whenever you're ready, gently open your eyes. And then share in the chat box any quality or insight or message that you're willing to take with you and practice, how it shows up in your own life, in your own day-to-day world, any ways that you are committing to living on the higher plane and vibration, any kind of inner insight prompting message. I'll give you guys a chance to write it. Jen was saying all of it. The crazy thing is I feel like I have pretty good self-confidence, but then when it gets quiet and I really notice my patterns, it's all there. That's so brilliant because there's a very subtle but very huge distinction between self-confidence and knowing who it is you really are, for lack of a better way to articulate that. It's very subtle that confidence can sometimes be a conditioned thing, or that we have a way of equating it with a conditioned thing, rather than like a child. If you think of like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old, they don't necessarily have self-confidence, yet they exude self-confidence because they're not self-conscious. They have no self-consciousness. They wouldn't know to say that they are self-confident or not self-confident, because what they are is they are embodied in who they are. They are inhabiting their highest truth, their truest self. And that's the all of it. That's why with a child, even when they're emotional and throwing a tantrum, they're not self-conscious. They're not in any way labeling any parts of themselves, and they simply embrace all of themselves. So I hope that's helpful to you. It's a very actually deep teaching. Deep D is saying, are we addicted to self-harm? So that's the question of the day. That's a really great question. And what I have found in, being married forever and raising an 18-year-old, and my work with myself, my work with all my clients, is I would say an unequivocal yes. So are we addicted to self-harm goes back to what I always use as a teaching, which is we've all been introduced to the idea of original sin, the idea that something's wrong with us, the idea as a culture or as a being that we could somehow be separate from our good, separate from our worthiness. Imagine, just for a moment, because we're all here on earth, and the truth of us is that we are harmless in the sense of we are innocent. And imagine if the narrative and the story that you and I and everyone had been told, that there is no original sin. What if that wasn't in the cultural narrative? What if the cultural narrative from eons ago, from generations ago, had been, oh my gosh, you're just the most astounding spiritual being. You are at home here. Your spirit is at home here on earth. You're a temple, a sanctuary of a being, and all parts of you are holy and sacred, and you're here to give of your gifts. Then there would be no practicing of harm. So yes, we've been taught cultural stories and also familial stories of harm. And then we've been indoctrinated into it, and now we self-perpetuate it. And so the spiritual homecoming is coming home to your own worthiness, but the bridge, the practice, it's like the brushing of your teeth every day, the spiritual practice every day, through the willingness to practice harmlessness. I can tell you for myself, like 20 years ago, when I got this mandate to start wearing all white, it was telling me my spiritual practice through seeing this white, this pristine white high vibration. It was an outer reminder to me to practice harmlessness with myself, to practice that way of being with my inner consciousness, and it changed my life completely. My inner consciousness is different now. It's not, I'm not perfect, but I practice harmlessness. I was even thinking Monday we should start like a 21-day. I had done a long while ago a 21-day kindness challenge when William was really young, because I saw how impatient I was with him. And I knew that as impatient as I was with him was as much harm as I was inflicting upon myself. I wouldn't be impatient with him if I wasn't impatient with myself. So I started this 21-day this kindness challenge, self-kindness challenge. And I said I was going to do 21 days of self-kindness. And on any day, whenever I noticed that I was inflicting harm through self-judgment or self-criticism, self-shaming, I would start over at day 1. And I remember my journal being on something like day 62 going, this is like freaking hard. And I honestly don't think I ever made it to 21 consecutive days of harmlessness with myself. But the practice of it was so powerful. Getting to day 62 or whatever it was so powerful.
I love what you said earlier. What if we were raised in that place of, I see you, I know the truth about you. And is it so deeply cultural? Because it's like, even when we reflect that to William, it's like, I think he knows, but there's a certain part of him that doesn't like to be seen or acknowledged.
Because he was conditioned.
Because he was, that conditioning.
He was conditioned at his elementary school because there was a little girl who was favored, and really favored to the extreme. And that was very distasteful to him because the whole class saw this girl up on a pedestal. And so now he doesn't want to be that because everybody knew. So he was conditioned.
Yeah. So it's like how, I know that it's about shifting in himself, but maybe how can we over the next year while he's still here, yet year and a half, forever, assist him to, I think it goes back to the Benji and Birdie story that I told about that healthy sense of pride. It's like, it's developing that healthy, because I was told, as I think many of us were told, don't get too full of yourself. Who do you think you are? Kind of thing. So it's always been this kind of, oh, thanks. I wouldn't even say thanks. I just kind of crumble when people would acknowledge me. And it's going back and just being able to receive that, knowing that I was going to say not who I am. It's just what I do. So I'm just being acknowledged for what I do. But it's changing the thinking. It's changing my mental response to it. So I can just receive it and go, yeah. Thank you. I am okay. And giving that to myself. Did I talk about the mirror exercise that I did? Have I ever talked about that in here? Remember, someone at some point early being in LA said I needed to go to the mirror and I needed to look in the mirror and I needed to look into my strongest eye and I needed to say, you're beautiful, I love you. And it took me 6 months to do it. I'd go to the mirror and I'd go, oh, hell no. I couldn't do it. I just looked at myself and felt such loathing. I didn't like the way I looked. I just felt so incredibly imperfect. And it took about 6 months of going to the mirror before I could stand in front of it, look in my strongest eye and say, I love you. You're beautiful. You're an amazing man. And it's probably something I should have just kept doing because that was never reflected to me growing up. But maybe I can start doing that even again now. Because what I witnessed this morning, even because I woke up really early, got out of bed, but I went into meditation. Calm my body. I began changing my mind. We've talked about this. And that's the context of addiction. I'm addicted to loathing myself. And it's like, so instead of loathing myself, how can I love myself?
Beautiful.
From loathing to loving. Floyd's here.
Yay. Hi, Floyd. For you all who haven't met our dear friend Gary Lynn Floyd yet, please go look up Floyd Lula on iTunes, Spotify, wherever.
And Gary Lynn Floyd.
Because they're each and both in their own individual rights, amazing songwriters. And this song that Jamie sang on Not My Story is a song they sing together.
We wrote together.
Their harmonies, yeah, they wrote together and sing together, sorry. But I say all this to say that it's such medicine for your soul, and it has everything to do with addiction and homecoming. And because I think everything about their individual work and their collective work together is about coming home to your highest self. And it's their music is really medicine. I was telling Jamie this morning when he said he was going to sing the song, is the music stays with me. It's like a soundtrack inside of my consciousness, and it's medicine. It helps me inoculate myself and raise my vibration and stay in that vibration all day. So hang on. That was a long tangent to Deepti's question about, do we inflict self-harm? So that was a good question. Patricia's saying, the quality I will take with me is trustworthiness, knowing that I can trust myself to be loving and gentle towards myself. I am here for me. Exactly. That is a practice. And so I look forward to coming back on Monday and seeing how everybody's been doing. I've been thinking, we have lots of assignments today, 21-day self-kindness challenge, a mirror practice if you want to do that, trusting yourself. I am here for me. Jen is saying, I think,
love that. This is what she said. Go ahead. Jennifer said.
Jen saying, I think women are conditioned so much that their visibility is about their looks.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's okay to shine there, but nothing else. Kind of like what Jamie is saying. I feel like it's taken so much time for me not to hide out. Not to hide out to the degree that you just keep feeding yourself that, like you don't have to hide out. It's okay to peek out. It's okay to come out. It's okay to come out. To that degree, addiction will quiet, right? That's exactly it. And Patricia's saying, thank you for your heartfelt share, Jamie. Your openness and authenticity is inspiring. I utterly agree. And yeah. So, all right, everyone, we have our respective assignments. We have our respective practices. And I'm also, anybody that does my work, like get a picture of yourself, your youngest self, speak to yourself, go to your mirror, practice self-harm, no self-harm this weekend, or harmlessness, go to your mirror, and stay connected. And we will see you on Monday.
Thank you all.
Love you guys.
Blessings. Have a great weekend.
Love you guys. Bye.